as it relates to what it does when you hit run or compile. So sometimes those are you'll see Pramga Marks to do things like I've done here on 257. We're saying, hey, ignore deprecated declarations inside this block here until we get to the end. So this Pramga Mark on line 257 tells the compiler if there are any warnings within this code right here as they relate to code that's being deprecated declarations, the little yellow things we see all the time, go ahead and ignore those until you get to here. The reason we're using this strategy in this little code block, because you generally don't want to ignore errors, but I know what the errors are, and I know that they don't hurt your app, but the only reason they show, let's see what they are with these Pramga Marks off, are different versions of iOS and different versions of the compiler warn people, right? And so we're trying to not warn people unnecessarily, because every warning that you see in your project, yeah, so if I was running on an older version of Xcode, I would get warnings. I'm not seeing them on this version of Xcode. Every warning you see in your project raises questions and concerns that, of course, we have to answer on the forum, and some of them are just better ignored. So we can use a Pramga Mark to ignore those. And so there's lots of other ways that we can use a Pramga Mark to teach the compiler certain things about the way we want it to behave. It's a very advanced topic. I wouldn't recommend just throwing Pramga Marks around in your code, because you're probably going to get into a situation where you don't know what happened. So that was that question. Another question that you had was tags. What the heck are tags? So this is a great question. And I'm going to use a plugin for an example on the tag question. We'll go to our menu buttons plugin, because I believe we tag things there. So if I say set tag, I'm just doing a search. Yeah, here we go. So a tag is a way in iOS to simply apply an identification mark, an ID, that you choose randomly, arbitrarily. You can decide whatever the heck you want, to apply to something. And I say something, you might want to tag a button. You might want to tag a view. You might want to tag an image. You might want to tag something. So as long as that something extends the UI view class, which almost everything does in Xcode, and what I mean by that is, if I go to the video player and I look at the XIB file for this, and we look at all the widgets that we use in our projects in iOS, all of these widgets, a rectangle button, a segmented control, text field, slider, switch, activity indicator, progress view, all of these little widgets, they all extend the view class. And so because they extend the view class, it's very, very common for developers to tag them. And let me give you an example of why we would tag something. So in this case, we're doing a for loop on our, let me get rid of this here. We're doing a for loop on our button screen, which starts at line 476 and ends at line 562, and we're saying, hey, for however many buttons there are on this screen, we want to do all of this stuff. So what we want to do is we want to add a button to the screen. Let's say that a buttons menu has 6 buttons. Well, then we would do this loop 6 times, and we would create a button and create a label and create all kinds of stuff with a position and a behavior for a button. Well, this lays them out all on the screen, but we want to know when someone taps a button, right? So how do we know what button they've tapped? Because we laid them all out in a dynamic way. You might have 20 buttons, I might have 3 buttons. So which one did you tap? It becomes kind of challenging to figure that out. So what we've done is we've applied a tag to every button. In this case, we've actually applied it to the view surrounding the button. But we could later on, anywhere in our code, find that view. We've added, in my example here, we added 6 buttons to the screen. We might say something like UI button, tapped button. Just, I'm doing it outside the brace here, but this is just a bad example, but let's see if we can do it without losing you. UI button, my button, equals self.view or self.view, find view by tag or something, get Let me find it here. I'm losing the. I can't remember the syntax. I'll have to look it up. Find by tag or point, and I can Google this. But what you're going to want to do is find with tag. So you can use that tag that we applied to this button right here, and it's a number, right? So the first button will be tag 0, the next button will be tag 1, the next button will be tag 2. We can say, hey screen, hey iOS, find the button with tag 9. And so it makes sense that we would tag that thing. Let me see if I can find it in the tap button method. I'm not giving up. Menu tap. No, I'm not. Oh, there it is. So we're saying that the button's tag, right? So we applied a variable I. We've said I equals the tag of the button that was pressed, and we're saying that that is a view with at object 1. And so again, kind of complex, but the short answer to your question is tags allow us to identify things arbitrarily so that we can later on find them in our code and use them. Because think of a view with like 90 subviews, right? 90 buttons or something. It can be very, very challenging to find them. So if we applied a tag to every button, we can easier access them later.
Where I got lost in tags. Well, where I got lost in tags was I was working on a plugin for the custom URL to give more choices for navigation. And then what happened is there's several button options there, and then so I guess that's where I got lost in tags, because I think each button gets a tag, and then it counts the tags to know which button they're referring to. But the buttons might not all the buttons will exist every time, and that's where I got lost in tags. It was in the custom URL, and then it wasn't behaving right because I think the wrong tag number was getting applied. That's where I think I commented last week in a different meeting that I was kind of lost on this very simple thing about generating an email. But that's where I got lost with the tags. Oops, I got a dog barking here. I'll put myself on mute.
There's probably a more detailed discussion to have about what your particular challenge is, whatever it is that you're running into. Keep in mind that there's, with programming, it's difficult, but it's a fluid idea in terms of the way you approach problems. And so whatever you're trying to do in your custom URL screen that you're maybe trying to extend or make a better one or something like that, I don't know what approach you're taking to solve whatever problem. Tags is one way of many, many ways to identify things. It just happens to be a popular thing. And so, yeah, who knows what you're doing, but it could be that, that's not even the best approach. I don't know. There's no such thing as the best approach, just a different approach. Some approaches are easier than others. And a lot of programming is, of course, understanding what you're doing. And if you have a clear understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, the way to accomplish it sometimes gets much, much better.
But the tags would always refer to an array, that kind of place, and so whatever the number it was, it was in the array would be the number tag, tag number 0, tag number 1 would be the number that it is in the array.
Well, when you talk about arrays, like I would identify a tag with something entirely different. If you say the word array and the word tag in the same sentence, I would think, okay, is she putting a list of tags into an array and then later trying to find the tag or something? A tag to me is just a number. Like in this case, we've assigned the number 49 to the browser toolbar. Here, browser toolbar.tag equals 49. Mm-hmm. And the only reason I would do that is somewhere else later in the code, we would say, hey, are there any views with tag 49? If there are, then I know that it's the browser toolbar, and maybe the person wants the browser toolbar to be blue.
Oh, yeah. I think that's how I solved it. I just made up a whole new tag number, and then that solved one of my problems. I just made up a new number.
Right. So it's just arbitrarily, I've just associated this number with this thing so that later in our code we could look at it.
Yeah.
So depending on what you're trying to do, you don't need to use tags. Mm-hmm. That's just one way to do it.
Okay. And the tag number would be unique to the whole project, or it would be unique just only to that one class?
Just to this one thing.
One thing. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, let's say I made an image view right here. UI image view, my image view equals UI image view, allocate, init with image, image named, just fun image.png. So this is an image view right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not on the screen. Let's add it to the screen. Self.view, add subview, my image view. So this is completely pretend right now, but the point is we made an image view, and then we added it to the screen. Well, maybe we wanted to rotate it 80 degrees.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know, somewhere else in our code. Maybe you click a button or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how would we find it? How could we tell iOS, hey, go find the view that's got an image in it? Well, we got a button. That doesn't make any sense. There's a bunch of images. So
Mm-hmm.
what if we gave it a tag?
Mm-hmm.
My image view, set tag, and this is completely arbitrary. Well, just the number, 44444.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be any number you wanted. It just represents a number that you decided. And then somewhere else in our code, just on some button click or whatever, you needed to find the image to rotate. And again, this is only one approach. There's lots of approaches to this.
Mm-hmm.
You could say UI image view, the image equals, and this is where I lost the syntax. I'd have to look it up real quick. I think it's self.view. I thought it was get view with tag. Now, let me Google it.
And the custom
What the
URL,
heck?
I think it's far. It's kind of at towards the bottom of the whole class.
Yeah, let me see here. UI view, find view by tag. Good old Stack Overflow will help us. I always just forget the syntax.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So what we can do is to find this image, comment this out. We're going to say self.view, view with tag, and then we put 44444, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now this thing represents a pointer or a reference to that image we made, and we gave it that tag. Oh, actually, we gave it 95999. So now we can do something with it, make it hidden, right? Maybe we want to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
Set hidden true. So that tag, to answer your question, is just a way for us to find an object that we identified. It's like, imagine having, I don't know, I heard a dog barking. You got 10 dogs in your backyard,
Yeah.
right? And you called those dogs one at a time, and you said, come here, boy. And as soon as he walked up, you wrote a number on his collar with a Sharpie pen. And you didn't change the dog's behavior, you just identified him.
Mm-hmm.
And you gave every dog a behavior, and then an hour later, you wanted to find dog number 7.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just say, hey, dog number 7, where are you? And he would run up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the same idea in this discussion. I want to add something to the screen, and then later on, I want to go back to that thing real quickly. So a tag is one way to do that.
Yeah, that's kind of saw. I ended up reading, what was happening is I was trying to make a right button. There's already a back button. I was trying to make a forward button, and what would happen
Yeah.
is every single time I clicked the forward button would behave like the back button because it had the same tag number. So finally, I figured that out and gave a different number, and then it worked.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the um, child items thing, or the NS mutable array that Andy was asking about. Are you still with us, Andy?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to recap the question, and tell me, you just interrupt me if I'm going down the wrong track here. But you asked, how do I connect? I think what you asked was, how do I connect an array of things in my plugin to my control panel, and what is the relationship between this mutable array? So I'm going to start by looking at the config data for this app, and I'm going to talk about something that has child items. Okay? So, and this is an important part of the discussion here. I'm going to break this down into an easier to see format so that we can just talk about this one idea. Okay, so this screen right here, let me separate it out so we can make some sense of it all. Here we go. Okay, so this is one screen in this application. And it has some properties. It's a button menu. There's its nickname. It's got a navigation bar title. And then it has a bunch of buttons. So we call these buttons child items. So each one of these items, because we're humans and we understand what a button menu is going to do, becomes a button on the screen. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 buttons. So the way that we add buttons to our JSON data is, of course, we could do it manually and just type it in here, but then it wouldn't be connected to our control panel, is we add rows to our screen. So now this, I'm working on a button menu, but I'm in a list menu, but that's all right. So row 1, you know what? Let me go back to the buttons. Here we go. So this button menu's got one row. Button 2. So I can choose a screen here. So now we have 2 buttons. So we use the control panel to do nothing more than to manipulate the JSON data. And because we're adding buttons, we're adding child items. If this was a, let me find our button screen. I'm looking for the data here. Yeah, here we go, button menu. So here's button 1, button 2. So those, all we're using the control panel for is to add and remove items to our data. So I think most of us understand that. But how does that data become an array of things on our plugin? So if I go to the menu screen, or the button screen, this is a good example. We just talked a little bit about this. We have this array, NS mutable array, of menu items. So what we're going to do is we're going to read our JSON data, and we're going to, for each one of those child items, we're going to add it to this list. So when our screen loads, we do that in the load data method. So we're saying, hey, if the screen data has this thing called child items, great. For each one of those, I want you to add one to our list. So does that help understand what the relationship is?
Yeah, I understand that because you spoke to that, but it's more the PHP stuff that you're typing into the control panel. But still, that's nothing compared to the fact that obviously we use on this we use menu list stuff. Yeah, it gets put into tables, whereas the class that we're using for this cover flow project doesn't use tables. It just uses an array. So obviously that's when I'm getting confused when I'm trying to, butcher the code together and switch it around. And
yeah. So you're asking? I'm hearing 2 things. I'm hearing you're having maybe a little bit of confusion on how to make your actual iOS screen, but also a little bit of confusion about when you say PHP. The only thing that PHP is for is to add some things to the database.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, it's the screen because I've tried to copy and paste it from the menu list plugin, the quiz plugin, but every time I do it, it just causes errors in other parts of the code, and it doesn't show up on the config data either.
I think what we should do is probably the same kind of idea with Susan, where she's got a very specific, problem or whatever, and that one item, maybe that's a webinar in itself or a screen share or something. I mean, I'm happy to look at what you've got. I just don't know that,
I'd really appreciate a screen share.
Yeah. No, that would be fun.
Out of anything we've got, it's this that's causing me the problems.
Sure. So maybe what we should do is you and I, and I'm happy to do this. It's kind of fun for me. You and I can jump on a Google Hangout and record it, and that can become something that the community can draw on.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, cool. So why don't you send me an email. I'm going to San Diego right now.
Yeah.
Send me an email with a couple of times. I mean, I'm even happy to try to do it over the weekend if I can. I don't know what this hotel is going to be like or whatever, but yeah, it's whatever the problem is. It's going to be easy. We just have, easy for me. We just have to figure out a way to get you to understand it and then record it.
Yeah, because I think, well, I know there's a couple of other people who've done this, but it's a plugin I think everyone would really like, so it'd be good to
Awesome.
get it out there.
Did you say a cover flow?
Yeah, if you look in the forum, it's there on me. Well, there's a YouTube video to it anyway.
Awesome.
It looks pretty cool. I mean,
It's super cool.
That's great. So, Susan, do we have any other questions? I can't. I did all of that from memory, literally sitting here. So it's like I don't remember any other questions that we brought up.
Oh, maybe we should go back to the group and see what the group has for questions. Well, I see someone
I
has.
don't have the list in front of me.
I think Tim has his hand raised. Let me make sure he's unmuted here. Tim, are you unmuted? Can you give us your question?
Tim emailed me some too.
Nope, I don't know if he can hear us. I think he muted. You might be muted, Tim.
Here, is that better?
Oh, no, you're there now, Tim, but louder.
You can hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
by the way, Tim, I'm super jealous of you being in that football stadium.
Yeah, that was fun stuff. Free.
That looked awesome.
They gave us a whole free tour and everything of all that stuff. You would have loved the guy giving the tour. He was like, "This is the field where the Bears' opponents come to get vanquished. This is the locker room where the victims from the game come to get patched up." He was a total Grabowski, man. It was good stuff. Good stuff. Where you were going with that temp menu items, right there.
Yep.
I've got mine working to that same exact point, right there. So I mean, I was
you
right
and Andy
at
are
that.
having the same question.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like right where you were going, right there. I was followed. That was exactly where I wanted you to go, and then all of a sudden you're like, you switched it on me. But I mean, that was exactly.
Well, let's go
right where
back
you
to
got
this.
that.
Yeah, let's go back to this and try to understand where the confusion lies. So maybe if
I'm loading that right. I'm loading that load screen. The stuff that you have on the screen, where it's a BT item, this menu item.
okay.
All right, let me pull up my plugin that I've been working on now real quick. I've got that in. That starts out right after I'm loading my array. So I'm loading two arrays. I'm loading an array of images, and I'm loading an array with labels for those images. And that's in the right when you launch the screen. That's in the init with nib. So then
Right.
that's before the view did load. So it looks like I'm actually building that array. And you do have to modify the plugin config to make sure you tell it that plugin uses child items.
Okay.
That was another big thing. So after you've got this array built, then I'm going down to where actually I have this whole cover flow view going on. So I'm detecting the image taps now.
Okay.
So once it's detecting a tap on an image there, that's when, at that point right here, let me just. After I'm detecting a tap on an image, that's when I'm using the NS string or the app delegate line. I'm sorry. It starts out with the pass this menu for the tap menu item method. And I'm starting with the BT item, this menu item, and then that's where it's actually, I think it's reading what is in the array that I've made.
Okay.
So then the next one is when you invoke the app delegate to load the screen ID.
Okay.
And I've got
that
working. When you tap the items in my array, it is loading these screens, but I'm always loading the same screen. So it's just I just don't have my array
so maybe
set up.
you're
maybe you're really close.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So here's a perfect example. I've got a launch screen method right here in front of us, right?
Okay.
So this method, and I don't know what was that?
Okay, I see it. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, this is the menu button screen, but it could also be the menu list. It doesn't matter which one of these is. The concept's the same. So if I go back to where I was, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just saying that for whatever your method is called, it's got a name. It's probably launch screen or tap screen, whatever you've called it.
Exactly.
So in this case, when whatever button was pressed, we're passing this method in an item, a BuzzTouch item, which in this case is going to represent a button. In yours, it sounds like it's going to represent an image.
No, it's actually just loading a screen from a view, from an image.
Yeah, tab. But what did I tap on the screen to trigger this method?
It's a UI view, yeah.
Okay, so don't I need to know which one was tapped? Don't you,
right.
you, me, we, the developers, we need to know which one was tapped before we can learn what screen to load.
Right. So I have, where I'm loading that array, and I have the object, and I have a carousel current item index.
Okay.
That's what is telling me which item I'm on, correct?
Okay, so maybe are you passing in a number? Like you tapped item number 6? Or what are you passing into your method?
Like
Here's how I would
figure
do it.
that out. Okay.
Yeah, well let's maybe this will help. Let's get rid of this and make some white space. And then let's say that we know that the array is full of items. Okay?
Okay.
So, and we want to figure out which one was tapped. So BuzzTouch item, the tapped item, equals, right now we'll just say it's null. Okay? Nil, just for fun. But I'm saying to myself as a programmer, hey, I'm going to try to find this thing in that array. So what's your array called?
Let's see, my array. I'm working off a different screen.
It doesn't matter. I'm just making a fake one right here just for fun. Let's say it's called the array. It doesn't matter what we call it.
Yeah,
I'm just making a pretend one.
Yeah,
okay,
actually the array comes out as my menu items, right? When you set it up at that.
My menu
array.
items, okay. Perfect. Okay. So we have this thing right here, this list of things. And we know it's got, whatever, 20 things in it. And we want to find one of them in the list. The one that was tapped.
Right.
So how do you know which one was tapped? Let's say it was number 6. Yeah, and I think that's our challenge. Let's say it's number 6. We could say the tapped item equals my menu items. My menu items object at index 6. So now this thing would mean the 6th one in this list. But that's because I knew it was number 6. So in your case, it sounds to me like you don't know which one was tapped.
Right.
So what you could do is similar to what we did before. Wherever you're adding them, just add a tag to it. My image view, whatever it is. I don't know what you called it. I'm calling this button box. Set tag, and maybe in your loop, the first one gets tag 1, the second one gets tag 2, the third one gets tag 3. And that way in your method later on, you could say, hey, the thing that was tapped, I know the number of it. It's got a tag with that same number. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll look at what you have, kind of like Kitsy's, if you want to send it to me or whatever. But it sounds to me like you're just getting hung up on detecting which thing was tapped.
Well, yeah, I've put the debugger in there, and I'm able to see that when I'm tapping on the image, it's tapping it. So I'm seeing the message come up there. So it doesn't even matter which item in that scroll. I'm at least detecting the tap. So it seems like the iCarousel method itself handles and tells you which one you're at, the object index.
Awesome.
It seems like it passes that to you. And
well,
so
then
it's
maybe
just a matter of
maybe
you
in your
taking that.
Maybe in your method that it's tapping, it says something right in there like you said, maybe it's already doing this for you, the tapped index, or something like that. If you already know the number that's being sent to it, well, then you can use that number in your list with the get object at deal.
Yeah, it's a did select item at index.
Oh, there you go. So the at index is probably the number of the item. So then you know that it's the 3rd item in your list of BuzzTouch items.
Right. So I'm question is if I'm building that array like earlier in the code with that NS array menu items.
Okay.
As long as in that method down there where I'm copying that the BuzzTouch, the code that you already wrote where it uses the app delegate. If I'm changing, if I add a JSON variable for each item that links to a screen, and as long as that method's in there, I put that JSON variable in there and launch that, saying it should wire it up and connect.
Yeah, it should work.
Without me doing much of anything. It should. Okay.
Right. Yeah, it should already be in there.
Working. It's working right now, but it always goes to the same exact screen. So
yeah, and I would bet. And I would bet without totally hurting your feelings, it's probably like a 5-minute fix if I had it in front of me.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, I hadn't even thought about using the image taps on this plugin. What I did is I made this plugin to just be like a cover flow thing to show album cover.
That's sweet.
Then I was looking at it, and I would try to piece it together so that I could get the array so people could pick the number of items in the array and then pick the carousel type they wanted to use because there's about 11 different kinds.
Right.
And I packaged that up and shipped it off to you like yesterday before I walked out the door. And then I got home and I saw that post by Andy, and it was like, oh wow, that's even better.
Sounds like we'll have a couple of them to look at.
Yeah. So then I went. I realized he was using the same thing as I was, so and I saw he was using the taps, and I'd seen the taps in the documentation I was reading, and I was gonna tackle it, but then I was just thinking, well, what am I gonna use those? But then when I saw him using it for a menu, I'm like, oh, awesome idea. So it took me about 20 minutes to get those taps working.
That's cool.
So left it there, and I knew that it's just the array.
I think I saw a forum post that Andy was talking about that I didn't click on that said is it the world's craziest menu or something? Is that the one?
Yep. Yeah,
awesome.
Watch his YouTube. It's great stuff.
Awesome.
And that's a pretty easy view controller to put in there, and it has a ton of options, and I never even thought about using some of that stuff. So it's cool when you see another developer using something you're using a different way. And you go, oh,
totally.
Cool. I guess I could do that with that. So I love it. I think it's great.
Great.
I don't have any, it's like seeing somebody else motivate you to do something better with that. So what I'll do is I'll package that up. I have it called like an iCarousel menu.
Got it.
And then I also have a plain old iCarousel cover flow. So I'm thinking that it's going to be two separate plugins because I probably want to use the cover flow in a different way.
Yeah.
I would want to use menu. So I can see where you kind of engineer your own plugins, based on need. One thing does something, then you change it just a little bit, and it becomes a whole new plugin. So
exactly. That's how I make my living. I make apps by extending what I did in the past.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's the whole point. And so all of us are trying to kind of share in that concept in a bigger kind of community way. And so far, I think it's doing pretty good.
Yeah. I think we're right on the edge there. I think we're starting to see other developers and stuff like that. I mean, some of us are using the same stuff and starting to work together. I think it's cool.
Yeah, so I'm going to, unless there's any others, I don't have the attendee list or the questions list, so I'm going to have to revert to Susan. But unless there's any others, I'm going to get this machine back on the road.
Yeah, please do. Thank you kindly. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And Andy, you're going to send me an email with some times that we want to try to connect, right?
Yeah, please. It's just, it would be, especially with me quiz plugin thing I'm trying to do as well, with the achievements, it'll just help. Is it david@buzztouch.com? Is that it?
Yep.
Because yours isn't advertised as well as. Cool, I'll do that.
Top secret.
Yep, there's no more hands raised, so
Okay, cool.
we can probably let you get on your way there, David. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. And I forgot to push record right away, so this actually is a little hard to try to listen to the conversation. So we need to really appreciate Warren for all he does for doing these for us. But I got most of it recorded, so this should be out there.
I was just going to say, no, Warren's a blessing. He's got this stuff all figured out. So awesome. Thanks for filling in, Susan, and I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Yep.
See you later, guys.